Hello, and welcome to an analysis of Shadow of the Colossus' ending cutscene from the E3 demo. This cutscene features many interesting pieces of changed or early development content that is only accessible through this cutscene due to its unfinished nature. Because of how unfinished this cutscene is, at this point in development, I'll only be covering the main points of notoriety, since there are a lot of small changes that aren't very interesting to cover. To analyse this cutscene effectively, I'll be using the debug mode that Wizzy fixed up for the E3 demo, so a big thank you to him. I'll be using the free camera and pausing the cutscene to take a good look at what we can find. If you think you notice anything you think is interesting that we didn't mention, then please feel free to leave a comment and let us know. If you would like to see a full, unedited version of the cutscene without any of my commentary, then a version of that will be uploaded shortly after this video's release. That should cover the introduction, so let's just get into it. Now, the first thing you'll notice is that the famous bridge is currently in a very unfinished state, quite similar to how the bridge looked in the early screenshots of the Spider Colossus. The texture is the same as seen in the Spider screenshots, however, the colour of the texture is different. While the texture may be the same as from an earlier point in development, the model itself has been updated, and it is in the same state as it is in the finished version of the game. The Shrine of Worship itself is also in a very crude state, the same state of which can be glimpsed in this early footage of the second Colossus. Another thing to pick up on is the complete lack of music and sound effects during this cutscene. The cutscene at this stage is simply so unfinished they just hadn't implemented it yet. Looking at Wanda here, we can see an early version of his corrupted model. His hair is missing a texture due to the game trying to pull a texture from the game's files that simply don't exist anymore. Very likely the same texture used on his old model from the red hair beta period of development, considering the time frame most other assets in this cutscene are pulled from. One of the best pieces of old content in the E3 demo was found within this cutscene, a version of the Shrine of Worship's interior from an earlier point in development, likely around the end of 2004. This shrine has several features seen in early screenshots and clips of the game from when it was first announced in September of 2004, such as the old texturing and the old floor design. However, the main find within this version of the shrine are pedestals for 24 Colossi statues, from before the time the unused Colossi were deleted. Unfortunately, the models for the unused Colossal idol statues are not present within this demo's files, due to the fact the idol statues are destroyed by this point in the game. Nonetheless, it is still satisfying to finally be able to see and explore this old version of the Shrine of Worship, after fans have only been able to see it through old screenshots and grainy videos for the last 15 years. Another striking piece of old content found in this early cutscene is of a small chunk of land from the F4 quadrant from an early stage of development. Due to the stage of development most assets of this cutscene are pulled from, it's safe to assume this is from around the same period as the Red Hair beta, which is a build of the game from late 2004. Unfortunately, there is only a small chunk of the quadrant, so there isn't much to see, but it's interesting nonetheless to be able to explore this piece of the game that is pulled straight from a build of the game from possibly over a year before release, a time period which would still contain the unused Colossi. Similar to Wanda having an old model for this cutscene, Dormin too is significantly less refined than his final iteration. His spidery legs and tail aren't transparent, which means we get to take a very good look at them, which is normally quite difficult to see in the final game. Dormin's horns here are very clearly different, being far larger and bent backwards behind his face, but the far more interesting differences lie in what has been more clearly revealed to us in this early model. The legs on Dormin's back are the same as they are on his model in the final game, but the transparency being turned off makes it very easy to see that these are actually the exact same legs used on an early model of the unused Spider Colossus, as you can see here in this comparison. His tail, however, is far longer on this early model, and it too is ripped straight from an unused Colossus, and that Colossus is rock. As you can see here, the frills at the end and the spines running along the top of the tail are identical to the ones seen in the screenshots of rock. So while these Colossi may not have made it into the final version of the game, at least they survive in some small way in this demo. During the Playable Dormin section, the only way to end it is to press the X button. Even if Emon and his men escape to the pool beneath a spiral staircase, they will all stand and wait for the player to press the X button to begin the next part of the cutscene. The shrine also has no boundaries, meaning you can take Dormin outside of the shrine as far as you'd like, which results in some strange occurrences, really. Once you take control of Wonder, the same applies to this section as well. Getting pulled into the pool no longer triggers the next portion of the cutscene, and you have to press X. This section also has no invisible wall this time, meaning you are free to leave the shrine if you can manage to resist the pull of the pool. Unfortunately, there is no collision beyond the shrine and the small chunk of F4, so there's no way to properly explore beyond the shrine. One of the more interesting story changes in this cutscene is that instead of throwing the ancient sword into the pool, Wonder instead throws a horn, like the one seen on Eco or Wonder in his corrupted state. It's not clear where Emon would have collected this horn from, but perhaps he once had horns of his own and cut them off, explaining the bandages on his head, or perhaps there's an entirely unknown person who he collected them off. It is interesting to ponder what the significance of this horn used to be, given it was changed in the final game. Once the cutscene begins panning through snapshots of all the Colossi arenas, one thing becomes abundantly clear, and that there are no death models yet made for any Colossi, except a very crude death model of the first Colossus, which is used as a placeholder for all the Colossi. Something we were hoping to find when this cutscene was first unlocked in this demo thanks to Wizzy, were snapshots of the unused Colossi arenas, but alas, there aren't any, suggesting the unused Colossi were cut before this part of the cutscene was created, or they were removed when the Colossi were cut. There are, however, some interesting differences in some of these snapshots of the final Colossi arenas which we can cover, as they appear to be an even earlier version of the playable arenas in the E3 demo. A minor difference in the second Colossus arena is this small pillar, but a more interesting difference is the presence of a large amount of rocks atop the arena. This suggests the arena likely dates back to around the development stage of this early map, considering you can see a similar large mound of rocks above the arena here. It's possible these rocks have been present in the arena for a long time, however, so consider this the upper limit on what stage of development this arena could be from. Another interesting difference is the entirety of the 4th Colossus' arena, which is completely inverted. This could very well explain why the arena of the 4th Colossus is rather buggy in the E3 demo, as the cutscene introducing its arena seems to be unchanged from this point of development, clipping through walls and focusing on the arena before it was flipped. It would also explain why a low-resolution model of a mountain continuously loads and unloads during the 4th Colossus fight, as it was likely a backdrop to the fight before the arena was flipped. We aren't entirely sure why the arena was flipped, but it could be to do with memory issues the original orientation could have presented, and having the arena face the opposite way meant the game had to load less assets. Another change is present in the snapshot of the 5th Colossus arena, showing the arena without any platforms for you to leap onto the Colossus from. While this could be from before the fight revision the 5th Colossus underwent, as you would originally hide behind pillars and approach its tail hanging in the water as it blew gusts of wind at you, it's more likely the cutscene simply doesn't load the platforms as they are a separate object to the arena itself. The 15th Colossus' arena also has some minor changes, featuring a simple staircase leading up to the balconies instead of a wall as seen in the playable version of the fight in the E3 demo. Lastly, the 16th Colossus' arena also has some rather interesting changes. There are more walls to run behind at the last section of the run-up to the Colossus, likely due to the fact that there is no roll mechanic at this stage in development, meaning you wouldn't be fast enough to progress through the fight if the wall layout was the same as the final game. The section where you approach from the cliff edge is also slightly different, featuring a simple walkway instead of a ledge to climb along. The most notable change, however, are these strange water textures on the back of the walls that look similar to metallic plates. This could be something to do with the fact that the bolts fired by the 16th Colossus can reflect off the walls occasionally in the E3 demo version of the fight, but that could also just be a simple bug yet to be ironed out at this stage of development. Whatever the case, these are strange indeed. One change in the cutscene that's quite easy to overlook is Agro's lack of a limp when climbing up the stairs towards the gardens. It's unclear if the developers originally intended a happier ending for Agro or if they simply hadn't animated the limp for him yet, because it is visible when he first approaches Mono in this cutscene. Judging by the state of the animations during this portion of the ending, however, it's probably safe to assume that these are placeholder animations, which is especially clear when looking at Mono's very stiff walk. The last thing I'd like to cover today is the unfinished gardens, as they contain one interesting asset that is certainly strange to find here, that asset being a mini, low-polygon version of the 15th Colossus arena. It's unclear why this asset is present in the gardens, but it's probably safe to assume it was just a placeholder from before they finished modelling this upper area. That's all from us today. We hope you enjoyed, and please consider liking and subscribing. We apologise for the long absence, but we hope to get back into the swing of things and upload content more frequently from now on. Thank you for watching, and we hope you look forward to what we have in store for the future.